Oh, I made the mistake of reading YouTube comments. Don't ever do that. It's a horrible idea. Stick with me here, okay? So, the web. We talked about the web already. Um, and I'm going to talk about one of the topics that people fight about the most when it comes to web technology. In fact, I would go so far as to say that almost all of the fights that happen about web related technologies and approaches to the web come down to a basic difference of opinion and a different base usage for the web. So, hear me out. The web started out, as I did in another very long video about the history of the web. You can watch it if you want. Go look at that. The web started out as a way to share email. Bottom line, put a whole bunch of email on a server, intersperse some, clickable links in there with pictures of certain, you know, collisions and stuff like that. And you get the World Wide Web that was invented at CERN by Tim Berners-Lee. It was basically a place to put documents, and it was a website. Website is a collection of documents that have pictures potentially and hyperlinks. You can click on there and go between the documents. That is the web. That is the fundamental use of the World Wide Web. And one of my biggest complaints is that the modern web in 2024 has become so much more than that we've kind of lost track of the fact that the original intent of the World Wide Web was to share static documentation that changed on occasion, but it didn't depend on some real time interaction. It was like, give me the resources, give me the picture, give me the text, and then show it to me. And maybe I can even cache it and keep it locally, right? So I have a copy on my phone or something. That was the original intent of the World Wide Web. It solved a big, big problem. How do we share documents without spamming everybody in email? And it worked, and it still works to this day. And if you go hear about Tim Berners-Lee's complaints about the web today, his primary complaint is that the web has lost its way. It just doesn't know about that base usage of the web. So, what other ways is the web being used today, and how is this creating division among web developers as well as just absolute confusion and unusability in the web? So the very first usage of the web, and I think it should still be the primary usage, is for document exchange. That means you take a document, and I mean a document with sections, articles, and everything, and we'll get into that in another video when we talk about HTML and Markdown. Exchanging documents, rich media documents, documents that may have a picture or something in there, but for the most part, they're the kind of documents that could be printed into a book and you could use the book instead, right? That's the fundamental use of the web. Now, that kind of grew, right? The first time somebody wanted an interactive graph, right? Then that document kind of changed, because that interactive graph where you can change the numbers on the graph and stuff started turning, it wasn't a document anymore at that point, right? Because even though there might be a way to print it, being able to interact with the graph and change the numbers or drag and drop, now that's no longer a document. Now it's kind of an application, right? And this is the beginning of the biggest division in the entire internet when it comes to the World Wide Web, is that you have people that are making apps, and you have people that are making documents, and you have people that are mixing the two up. And so that becomes a really bad problem, because now you have content that could otherwise be consumed like documents. And I remember, I don't know if this is still true, but at one point, I won't say the language, but there was one particular language that had a documentation site that could not be viewed without JavaScript support. And when we get down later on, when we start talking about the terminal, we're going to talk about using research tools from the terminal, such as links and W3M, and how to do text-based browsing. People will think, why would I ever do that? The main reason to do that is because I can find things in a fraction of the time. We're talking 1/30th or 1/100th of the time that it takes somebody to do with a graphic-based web browser, and I'll show you how to do that, because you want to be able to get that research as fast as possible. In the world with ChatGPT, still being able to search the World Wide Web from the command line is extremely valuable. But when your language or your site or your blog decides to create a JavaScript dependency for what is otherwise an article and a document, just so that it can be rendered properly, you've now stopped that from being used. Not only that, you probably violated a number of things that allow it to be viewed by those who are blind or death. And we will talk about that a little bit later, perhaps in a video about all the people, including Pizza Hut, who was sued and lost by the blind community and others because their site was an app and it didn't need to be an app. Okay, so we have the document web and we have the what I call the app web. This is just as populated by div soup, which we'll talk about when we get into HTML, but it's turned the World Wide Web into a framework for distributing web applications. And I think that's fine. The problem is, as I said already, is the mixing of the document web with the app web. When you mix those two together, you get something that neither is a very good web app, nor can it be used as a document, right? And so the plea that I will put right now in this video is don't mix the two. When possible, separate out your documentation from, thank you for the happy. Separate out your documentation from your apps, okay? Because if you can have your interactive awesome app thing. It's one of the reasons that I like Vue so much, because Vue is very modular. You can have an interactive element of your document and it doesn't kill the rest of your document. It still displays and can, your view source is readable and all of that. Okay. So you have the document web and you have the app web, right? And there's still, I think there's two other forms of web that are emerging. There's the streaming web, or the rich media web, and that includes, people forget this, but Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime. I mean, when you go to use Amazon Prime, you don't even realize you're using the web anymore, but that is all web tech, right? So we have what I would call the streaming web, or the content delivery web, but I call it the streaming web. The streaming web is largely what you're watching right now. You're watching multimedia videos. It's basically the broadcast web, streaming, broadcast, whatever you want to call it. It is web tech. I know it's hard to believe, but you're now participating in web technology, but you almost change your brain mode when you go to consume that kind of web, right? You're like, no, it's like my replacement for, the radio or the TV. It's the streaming web. It's the broadcasting web. And I still feel like that is a part of the web. Hypermedia goes back to the 60s, absolutely. But Berners-Lee didn't invent it; he just applied that technique. That's a good clarification. Thank you, Ronnie. So we have those three types, right? Now, I believe that there's a third type of web, and this I used to call it the conversational web, but I would call it the AI web. And the AI web is just the web being used as an excuse to convey AI information, and whether it be auto-generated, it kind of overlaps with the application web, but I feel like it's the web as a transport medium for AI, and it's basically our method of querying AI. So more and more the big, like the ChatGPTs and the Geminis and the Googles and all that, these things are coming about and we are talking to them and they are answering us. So there's kind of like this AI web, which is its own thing, in my opinion. It's being totally backed by AI engines, and the method the method that it communicates with us is sort of based on some of the app web and other things like that, but it's fundamentally about the interacting with AI. And that we're going to see AI hit all of the other areas, but you could also call this is the AI web. I would have called conversational web before, or the search web, right? That is its own beast, right? It's its own beast, being able to query and get data out of the web and get it back. That is, it's an app. It's not really a document, right? It's formatted in documents, but it's largely about the web itself is providing the front end to data query. And in this day and age, that data querying is AI web. So that would be the fourth major category for the web that I would put. So the four categories for me are the document web, the original web, the app web, which is the web as a transport medium for applications, the streaming web or the broadcast web, that includes radio and video like this, and the query web or the AI web, which is I'm getting data and I want data back, whatever that is. And usually there's going to be an AI or there's some large amount of data query involved there. Those are the four types of web. And as we go into web development, when the reason I have to clarify what the different uses of the web are, the primary uses, and when we talk about web development, people are always like, "What are you talking about? Making a basic website? Does that mean I have to know how to do X or Y?" I'm like, no, we're just talking about making a document. So that I have to say, we're not going to be making apps. I'm like, what do you mean we're not learning JavaScript? I can't make a website without JavaScript. You absolutely can. You can make a web document without it, right? And that is the fundamental reason for this video. Proceed to leave your negative comments below if you disagree. I'm having a bad day. Okay, talk to you later.